Welcome to the First Player Token Podcast, a short podcast for folks who enjoy playing board games with family and friends. I'm your host, Derek Bruff. In this episode, I have another family board game recommendation, Gizmos. When I was a kid, I remember being fascinated by the illustration of a Rube Goldberg machine in my parents' 1984 World Book Encyclopedia. Rube Goldberg was an American cartoonist active in the 1920s and 1930s, and he was famous for cartoons depicting these very complicated machines that performed very simple tasks, usually involving a ridiculous sequence of steps. If you'd like to see a modern-day Rube Goldberg machine, watch the OK Go video for their song This Too Shall Pass. It's an epic series of crazy contraptions, each triggering the next in a very long chain, timed to go off in sync with the song, ending with the band being doused in paint. I just showed it to my kids and they were in awe. Seriously, Google it. Gizmos is a 2018 game from CMON Games, very much in the spirit of a Rube Goldberg machine. Players take on the role of inventors, constructing ever more elaborate contraptions out of simple gizmos, each represented by a card with a whimsical illustration. If you're clever, at some point in the game, you'll have a turn where you take an action, which triggers one of your gizmos, which then triggers another gizmo, and so on, just like a Rube Goldberg machine. It's not quite as entertaining as that OK Go video, but it's still very satisfying to see that machine you've spent a dozen rounds building reach its potential with a giant move. Building gizmos takes energy, and that's where the components of this game really shine. Energy is represented by these colorful plastic marbles with little bubbles inside. Red marbles for heat energy, yellow for electricity, blue for atomic energy, and black for batteries. Your kids will want to pick up and play with these marbles, and you will too. They're just so colorful and rolly. And it gets better. The game comes with an energy dispenser, this cardboard apparatus you put together that looks a bit like a gumball machine. You load the energy spheres, that is, the marbles, in the top, and then 6 of them roll out in a chute at the front of the dispenser, while the others sit inside, hidden by the walls of the dispenser. One of the actions you can take on your turn is to pick one of the 6 available energy spheres in the chute, at which point another marble rolls in from the dispenser. A lot of your gizmo building strategy depends on collecting marbles of the right color, so picking up that marble from the chute and seeing what color marble arrives next can be very exciting, or rather frustrating if it's not the color you needed. On each player's turn, they can take one of 4 different actions. The pick action lets you collect one of the marbles visible on the dispenser chute, adding it to your energy ring, which is a cardboard ring that corrals your marbles. The build action lets you spend your energy spheres to choose a gizmo from the common display area, kind of like a market for gizmos, and add it to your machine. There are always 9 gizmos available in the display area, and different gizmos have different costs and effects. You might spend 1 yellow marble to build a level 1 gizmo, but 6 blue marbles to build a powerful level 3 gizmo. The file action lets you take a gizmo from the display area and save it for a later build action, so no one else but you can build it. And the research action lets you look through one of the 3 stacks of face-down gizmos, level 1, level 2, and level 3, and pick one to build or file, which can be a very smart move if you can't afford any of the available gizmos, or if they won't work well with the gizmos already in your machine. The gizmos you collect can trigger off the actions that you take and let you take further actions. Suppose you have, let's call it Gizmo A, which triggers whenever you build a yellow gizmo, granting you an extra pick action. That's the one that lets you get a new marble. And suppose that you have, let's call it Gizmo B, which triggers when you pick a red marble from the dispenser chute, allowing you to draw another marble without looking from the top of the dispenser. Now, on your turn, if you use your action to build a new yellow gizmo, you'll trigger Gizmo A, which gives you an extra pick. If you pick a red marble from the dispenser chute, then you'll trigger Gizmo B, which gives you a random marble from inside the dispenser. That's a build, a pick, and a blind draw, all in the same turn. Chain together a few more gizmos, and you've got a quality Rube Goldberg machine. I have more to say about Gizmos, the game, but let's go ahead and hear from our science fair correspondent with his thoughts on Gizmos. So what game do we have here?
Gizmos.
Yeah. Tell me about Gizmos.
It's fun.
Yeah. What do you do in Gizmos?
So you get all these bunch of cards, and they have like different attachments, and you can use them to get more cyber balls things.
Right. Yeah.
And these are gizmos, and they help you win the game.
That's right. So you said it's fun. Why do you like this game?
Because it involves strategizing and competitiveness and fun.
Yeah. What about those marbles? What do you think about those?
I like them.
You got this whole marble dispenser.
Yeah.
That's right. What's your strategy in Gizmos?
I try to get some. Starting out, I try to get some low card ones, like the ones that you buy for like 2 and 1. But then once I get more gizmos, like saving up and like try to get home more, then I'm gonna start getting the 3s and 4s and 5s and 6s and 7s.
And some of the gizmos give you points when you use them. Mm-hmm. Those are helpful too.
Yeah, that.
Yeah. So if you were gonna talk a friend into playing Gizmos, what would you tell them? Like, why should they play it?
That it's fun and it's a game that you can play with more than 2 people.
That is true. That is true. I think that's it.
Okay.
Thanks.
You are very welcome.
That was my 9-year-old nephew, who is always very sensible with his game recommendations. Gizmos is a game for 2 to 4 players that plays in about an hour if you're playing with new or younger players. The box says it's best for ages 14 and up, but I think they might have just put that there because they're worried younger players might try to eat the marbles. If that's not a concern in your house, then you can probably play with kids as young as 7. There's no reading required in the game, just a lot of icons to learn. Our kids pick them up quickly, however, since the iconography is pretty intuitive. There's a wrench to represent the build action, a hand holding a marble for the pick action, and so on. Gizmos is an engine building game, even more so than Space Park, which I recommended back in episode 2. As you add gizmos to your machine gets better and better at generating the resources you need for better and better gizmos. Unlike some engine building games that seem to end just before your engine gets going, Gizmos lasts long enough for you to pull off a couple of big moves, which is really satisfying. However, building a good engine takes some strategy, as my nephew mentioned. He learned that the hard way. The first few times he played, he went after the powerful level 3 gizmos, but that took forever because he didn't build the level 1 and level 2 gizmos he needed to power up his engine. Younger players might need a little coaching the first few times they play. Gizmos was designed by Phil Walker Harding, who you may remember as the designer of Sushi Go, which I recommended back in episode 4. Gizmos is another fantastic family game with lots of opportunities for clever combos and components you'll want to play with. Seriously, those marbles and that dispenser are so fun. That's it for this episode of the First Player Token podcast. See the show notes for a link to my website, where you can find past episodes, see photos of Gizmos, and find a link to our new Facebook group. If you have a minute, please rate and review the podcast on iTunes or wherever you listen. I've been your host, Derek Bruff. Thanks for listening. Now it's time to play some games.
And the funny thing about it, on the outside, there's like a